It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
Hello, welcome to the show. This is Phil Ferguson, and of course, this is the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show. It is the middle of May 2020, and I don't know, are we 2 months into the stay-at-home guidance suggestion? I don't like lock-in, because I'm not locked in. I can go outside whenever I want. I can go mow the lawn. I can do some yard work. Matter of fact, my wife, I carried some dirt. That was about all I did. My wife has now put in a raised garden, and she already has a ton of plants started, so we're going to get them planted once we get to the point where we hopefully never have frost, at least for this year. And I think we are now at that point, but the next couple of days, we're supposed to get a lot of rain, so we're going to wait a couple more days because we don't want anything to wash out because it's all brand new, fluffy dirt. In this show, I've got mailbag coming up. You're going to love that. Couple of topics. One is kind of an annuity rant. Someone proposed, or a listener was proposed to buy an annuity. Of course, they didn't call it an annuity at the beginning, so we're going to go over that a little bit. We're also going to talk about possibly the extra risks in buying small cap stocks or a small cap stock fund versus large caps. So that might be something you're interested in. And kind of a follow-up from last year, Motley Fool mutual fund, just because they sent me an email and kind of assumed that I want to sell this shit to you. So I kind of struck me odd, so I figured I would do a segment on that. And then later on, the meat and potatoes of the show, we're going to talk to Jenna Belk. She is a former Catholic, and she is one of the co-hosts on the Atheist Experience TV show out of Austin, Texas, and is also one of the co-hosts on Godless Bitches podcast. And her recent, only a few years ago, recent deconversion and what kind of led her out and helped her out. And I think you're going to find her story absolutely fascinating. I know I did. So that's going to be basically all of my intro for now because, again, I have too much content to fit inside of 1 hour. So we'll just do a quick little musical magical medley thing here and go right into the show segments.
I'm not worried about dying because I'm an atheist, right? Now, I know that this is a Christian country and I stand up for your right to be religious, but please know that you're wrong, right? Please know that you're living in a fantasy land and that after you die, nothing happens. Stop being a fucking child. I'm not scared of dying because I'm an atheist. I know I'll just rot in the ground. Right? I won't even know I'm dead. Do you want to know why? Because I'll be fucking dead. Religious people worry because they believe in heaven. If there's a heaven, there has to be a hell. And everyone who's read that book knows that you've done enough shit to go to hell. Right? And that makes it very stressful on your deathbed, doesn't it? No one want to prick you are going, oh, this isn't going to be good. Hey? I don't want to go to heaven. I don't even want the option of heaven. I don't want to exist in a conscious state for the rest of eternity constantly thinking. I don't like thinking as it is. Where's me passport? Can't punch women in the face. The Bible calls heaven eternal bliss. I don't care how blissful it is. It's eternal. You'll get used to it, and then you'll be fucking bored. And what's hell meant to be like? Fire and brimstone and eternal agony? That's what's written in the Bible. That's God's book. As far as I know, the devil hasn't brought out a book. We don't know his side of the argument, right? If you ask me, the devil and God are having an argument. The devil's being a bigger fucking man. Because God's just writing shit about him. And the devil's going, I'm not even going to fucking comment, son, if you talk about me like that.
It's time for the mailbag. A couple of emails and or phone conversations I've had with people over the last few weeks. Just going to put a couple of them together here. One, I had someone email me because they've been contacted by someone that wants to help them make money when the stock market goes up, but not lose money when the stock market comes down. And they sent me some of the information and the things that they were told by the salesperson. And I was able to pretty quickly figure out that it is probably a variable annuity, and taught them some of the buzzwords and tricks that these things have in them to see if that raised any alarm bells. And I just got the email back that this person has had the second meeting with the salesperson and was now able to ask some of the hard-hitting questions, and the salesperson didn't know what the answers were. And so a couple of things that I'm just going to kind of cover this as, I'll give you the pitch and then I'll tell you the reality. So one of the things is that you get all of the upside on the stock market, and you're limited to, let's say, 10% loss when the market goes down, or sometimes 0% loss when the market goes down. And that's what the salesperson tells you. Now, I don't know if it's illegal or immoral or unethical, but the real meat and potatoes of any contract, like an annuity, is in the printed document. And that's where you've got to read it, and it probably has some kind of clause that, it supersedes any commitments, promises, or anything that the salesperson said, because it's all going to be ruled by the contract. So you got to read the paperwork. And sometimes this paperwork can be over 100 pages if you read it at all. But so one of the tricks with an annuity, let's say the average year the market return is 10%. They will say that you will keep 100% of the market returns. Okay, well, that 10% increase in value in an average year, which there never is an average year, but let's just say 10% for the sake of discussion, that includes dividends on those stocks. So let's say the stocks went up 7.5% and there was 2.5% dividends. That's how you get to 10. If they give you 100% of the appreciation, you may not realize, the salesperson may not genuinely know. This is the scary part, because salespeople aren't paid to know shit. They're paid to sell shit. And so if you got 100% of the market appreciation, you might make 7.5%. And they might make 2.5% because they keep all of the dividends. And so every year they're making 2.5%, 3%, depending on whatever the market is paying at that time, off of your money. Now, the next fun thing is they may have a thing called a participation rate. And of course, none of this is regulated as far as what words they can use or not use. They may call it something different. And so it can make it very hard for you to find it, even in the contract. And a participation rate might say that you have a 70% participation rate. And you say to me, Phil, what the fuck does that mean? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. If you invest $100,000 and you have a 70% participation rate, that means $30,000 of the dollars doesn't make a fucking dime for you. I shit you not. 30,000 makes nothing. It's not participating. 70% is participating. And remember, you're only getting 7.5% of the 10 because they pocket the dividends. We're only getting 7.5% on 70% of your money. So that means you're only making about 5% on the total. So you put in $100,000, you make 5%, they make 5%. Pretty cool, huh? So they keep half the money that you make with the risk that you're taking, or the risk that they're now taking. And so year after year after year, they get 5%, and you get whatever's left, averaging out at 5%. And in the last 11 years, that would mean that they would keep 5% per year for the last 10, 11 years. And then let's say in 2020, there is a drop in the market. I'm not predicting, this is just for the purposes of this conversation. And the market goes down 10, and let's say they promise you won't lose more than 10. Well, you still lost 10. If the market goes down 25 and they promise that you won't lose more than 10, they protected you 15% on the downside in 1 year, but they made 5% off your money the past 11 years. So they're way ahead and you're way behind. So what starts off as sounding like a good idea is a beautifully designed mathematical way to fuck you. And I have an appreciation for the cleverness of it and how it can be sold, but I think it should be unethical or immoral. And of course, there can be other tricks, other schemes. They can have, for a small fee of 1% per year, your participation rate goes from 70% to 80%. They can have a greater amount of protection, or they can say they cover the first 10% of your losses, which means if the market goes down 25, you don't lose 10, but you lose 15. And it may sound like to you that you're only going to lose 10. No, they only protect you for 10. So if the market goes down 40, they cover 10, but you lose 30. So there's all kinds of ways. And one of the problems is that, when someone asks me about an annuity, it depends. Because each annuity can be a unique contract. I mean, now a company might offer, rainbows up your ass annuity to hundreds, if not thousands of people, but every different program, every different company, the contract is unique. And you need to understand all of the details in that contract before you give them your money. If you are not going to read the 100-page contract, if you are not going to understand the 100-page contract, which I'm betting you're not because you're stupid, but because these things are wildly complicated. I've tried to read them, and I've been doing this business for over 20 years. I often don't understand what I'm reading. So that's some of the problems I have with annuities in a general sense. The other thing I had was someone sent me an email, which was a brilliant question, where recently I've talked about the possibility of moving money from the Vanguard large cap growth index into mid cap and small cap value indexes because of the significant, dramatic, and it still exists. It's not as dramatic today, but as of the recording of this, the Vanguard large cap growth, in the middle of May is about even with what it was January, where mid cap and small cap value may be down 25 to 30%. So readjusting in the things that went down. So the emailer basically said, hey, but Phil, in tough economic times, don't large companies have a greater cash reserve in general, and they can weather the rough times, and small companies have a hard time with a rough economy? And they're absolutely right. That's part of why the Vanguard Large Cap Growth Fund is even with January 1st, and the small cap value funds are down 25 to 30%. That's part of the reason, because a greater percentage of those companies will fail. Now, that's generally true in a good year. Small companies are more likely to fail as a percentage than large companies. The reason you invest in small companies is because as a collective group, while more of them fail, some of them succeed exceedingly well. I mean, at some point, Google was a small company. At some point, Apple was a small company. And when these companies are small, they can double, triple, 5, 10, 20 times their value in a very short period of time. While Google and Tesla and Apple and Netflix and eBay and all these companies might make really good money, and the stock, of course, can still go up, and of course it can beat the market, it is very unlikely that Apple stock is going to go up 20 times what it is today in the next 12 months. Matter of fact, that's very unlikely for virtually any stock, but there are those that do that. And how do you make sure that you get those stocks? Index funds. Because the index funds buy everything. They buy the losers, and they buy the winners, and they buy the winners in advance because you don't know they're winners yet until you see the results. And so the way to get all of the really well succeeding high return stocks is to buy everything. And so in this case, yeah, small cap stocks are going to have a rough year. And we'll probably see record numbers of small companies closing their doors permanently. Small cap stocks always are a little more risky. That's why you have to be attentive and a little careful at how much you put in there, which is why I'm making adjustments to my mix and not saying sell all of the large cap growth stocks and put 100% of your money in small cap value. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about a few percentage points adjustment. And you're able to buy small cap and mid cap value stocks at a significant discount even today. So that's why I recommend it. And yeah, it is true that they're more risky. And yes, most investors, or at least a significant enough portion of the market, knows about this. And that's part of the reason that they're down. So it's definitely not a more conservative recommendation. It's an opportunity. It's a chance where you can take a little bit more risk, not necessarily changing your asset allocation from bonds to stocks, but taking a little more risk in removing from large cap growth and into small cap values. So it's just an idea. If you don't like the idea, don't do it. And I have plenty of people that are in or close to retirement that don't want to make this adjustment. Well, maybe some of them don't want to. And then the more crazy idea, the much more risky idea, is to take some of your bond money that's there to protect you and putting that in the stock market. Usually you want to build your bond portfolio as you're getting closer to retirement. But if you've built or overbuilt the portion that is in the cushion and your job is safe and secure, and especially if you have multiple incomes and your pension is going to be good and you have a good amount in Social Security, and you're willing and able to take a little more risk, maybe when the market goes down a lot, and it's not really down a lot right now, it might be a chance for you to take some more risk and put money into different things. But just some ideas, and hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of discussion on these topics. I'm going to call this an Investing Skeptically bonus segment. Didn't really have this planned, but sometimes emails just show up in my lap. And this is kind of one of those funny things. I mentioned that I get emails from the industry, people in the industry wanting me to recommend and or sell things to you. And I don't know if I've talked about this. I do know that last September, show number 315, I talked about Motley Fool, and I'm going to do it again because they give this impression that they're just the shit, right? They know what to pick and when to pick it. And if you didn't know it, there's a Motley Fool fund. And I'm looking here specifically at FOOLX, FOOLX. That's the symbol that I'm looking at. And I got this email and it says, I want to thank you again for considering FOOLX as part of your clients' portfolios. And it just kind of struck me the wrong way. Thank you for considering again, or again for considering. I didn't consider it before. So since they bothered to send me an email telling me how awesome they are, I figured I would share with you my thoughts on this fund. And it goes on to say that they're in the top 30% of 1, 3, 5, and 10-year time periods. Okay. As compared to Morningstar's World Large Stock category. All right. And of course, when I pulled it up on Morningstar, it does have a nice looking graph when compared to an index or the category. And the category is world stock. Now, typically, and I went and looked this up to make sure that I knew this correctly. World stock portfolio means it's about 50% U.S. and 50-ish% not U.S. or something like that. Maybe 53% U.S. and 47% international. Who knows? I mean, there's some wiggle room in there when you buy and sell one stock. This fund currently has 65% U.S. and 34%. I'm going to call it 35%, 65, 35. Easily 2-to-1 U.S. versus international. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, So they're comparing a fund that has 2/3 of its money in the United States to a category or an index that's kind of 50-50. And the reason that's really important is because the international stocks, international funds have done much, much worse than domestic U.S. funds. So I thought, what I would do is I would compare this to something that's more likely a fair comparison. So I looked at the portfolio, and like I said, it's about 65-35 U.S. stock and non-U.S. stock. And so that's the first thing I found out. The next thing I learned from Morningstar, and you can do this yourself, morningstar.com, and you put in the symbol FOOL, FOOLX, and you can look up this fund yourself. And it's really, really predominantly not only large cap, but large cap growth stocks. Matter of fact, the weightings for the stocks is 48% of the stocks are large cap growth. 20% are not value, not growth, kind of in the middle. This is the thing that Morningstar creates that I'm not sure I necessarily agree with it, but that's okay. And 15% that are mid-cap growth, but really heavily large cap growth. So I thought it would be fair to compare it with the U.S. Large Cap Growth Fund and Vanguard's International Growth Fund, which I don't think is an index fund. Let me see here. Vanguard International Growth Fund, expense ratio 0.32. I think this is a managed fund, but just, for a reference point, and I'm going to use about 65% of the U.S. Large Cap Growth Index and about 35% of the Vanguard International Growth Index. And of course, your blended expense ratio is going to be about 0.1, 0.1%, whereas the Fool Fund is 1.1%. All right, well, if it beats these other things by 1% or more, it might be worth it, right? And the graph, again, shows it beating the index, but I'm saying it's not comparing it to the proper index. This is something that you really have to check for, and it's in this case in the footnotes, and it says category world large stock. So it's comparing itself to a balance of U.S. and world. When I looked at the two funds that I selected, the 1-year performance is about 14.5%. And yes, that seems high because I'm not looking at year to date. I'm looking at 1 year. And so we had a lot of growth in 2019, and sure, 2020 dropped a whole lot, but the large cap growth category right now is probably about even. So you have all those gains from last year, or half of last year. The blend on that is 14.5, whereas FOOLX is up 4.72. 4.7 versus 14.5. Almost 10 percentage points behind a fair apples to apples kind of comparison. Let's look at the 3-year history. The fund is 11.6, where the mix I created is 13.4, about 2%. 5-year average is 6.5. The mix I created was 11.1, so behind by 4.5%, 5%. And the 10-year record is almost 11% compared to 12.6%. And as one would expect, when you go further back in time, you're going to get closer and closer. But it has underperformed by about 1.6% per year on average. And the only reason it looks good in this graph at Morningstar is because they're comparing it to the wrong category, to the wrong index. So it's just a fun way that companies can produce something that looks really great. I mean, This is not anything crazy like comparing a bond fund to a stock fund. But when you're looking at stock funds, you have to compare the fund that you're considering to its correct category. You don't want to compare a U.S. large cap growth fund to a value fund, to a small cap fund, to an international fund. And I see this on a regular basis. And I don't know that this is the mutual funds problem. This is Morningstar, not sure what to compare it to. But still, be very, very careful when you compare things one to another to make sure you are comparing apples to apples. So FOOLX, Motley Fool, who leads you to believe on their websites and their podcasts that they are picking winners all the time, is about 10% behind what index funds would be for the last year, and average 1.6% behind for the last 10 years. So I thought you might enjoy that. The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Your investments should be based on your situation, and you should consult with your financial advisor before taking any action. The show may contain ads. These ads are placed into the show by the hosting company after I finish recording and editing. I have little control over the content of the ads, and you should not assume that I support their products or claims. If you choose to support the show via the new Patreon page, that support does not create an advisor-client relationship.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm so excited. I have with me Jenna Belk. How are you, Jenna?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I am well, and you are one of the co-hosts on Atheist Experience TV show, and if I remember correctly, Godless Bitches 3?
Uh-huh.
And any other shows that you're regularly on, or whatever else is in Austin?
I actually am on, I started my own show because I found out that there wasn't a lot of video footage out there about people after they come out of religion. There's a lot of stories about how people came out of religion, you know, how they got there, but not a lot of after. And so I needed help. And luckily for me, I had the ACA and a whole bunch of people there and this huge online platform, but some people don't have that. And so I thought I'd put out some videos of the things that I'm having to relearn and kind of learn it on air, since I happen to be passionate about it already. So hopefully it'll be helpful to someone.
Yeah, it has. I've heard the stories, and I got lucky enough that I kind of just dropped the whole religion thing at the age of 13. And it's I can think of one exception. Other than this one exception, it has not only never been a problem, but the more evangelical atheist I become, the more money I make. So that's not normal. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
But something I was told a whole lot, I think it's from the Bible, is the camel can't fit through the eye of a needle.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or a camel can put its tent under the nose of a ant. I can't remember. It's a really...
that's how likely you are to get into the kingdom of God with all your riches.
Yeah, that's really healthy. Oh, it's like the one that says, what is it? You have to sell everything and buy a sword, and if you can't afford a sword, sell your clothes and buy a sword to come with me. And people go, that's not in the Bible. And I'm like, it's your book. Read it.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Oh, yeah. Well,
you know, it's interesting. That's actually a good lesson, I think. But you can put it in a secular way just by saying you can't take it with you when you go. You know, it's like you don't need the Bible reference. So
well, I think that was, you know, people always go, it's not really literal. And I go,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was actually literal. I interpret it literal because it's... you know, someone's talking to Jesus directly. I just looked it up here. I think it's Luke 22:36. Because you have to leave everything. And of course, one of the first things is an apologetics website and goes, that's not what it really means. I go, okay. You know what? If I need your secret decoder ring to read every line in that fucking book, what value is it?
it just made me feel even more small and insignificant that I had, oh my gosh, I don't have that answer. Now I have to go and ask this person. And if I don't have access to this person, then I don't have access to that answer. And I'm just lost in the meantime. And
yeah, because I had sometimes the weirdest people to talk to are the most learned. And I don't necessarily mean, let me think how I want to phrase this politely. They're educated, but not necessarily street smart.
Okay.
I don't want to say intelligent versus not intelligence, because I
know what you mean.
I don't buy the whole IQ thing very much, but they know ancient Greek and Aramaic and Hebrew, but they don't know necessarily how to cross the street correctly because they've not really spent time figuring that out. And so they tell you, based in 20 years of studying, what this phrase means. And I'm like, really? The guidebook requires me to talk to you? And only after you spent 20 fucking years? And then how do I know you're wrong or right? I mean, it's just... Yeah. Anyway. So you've got...
I think there's a lot of... Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all good. I'll do that. You've got all these shows now. Talk to us about your shows. We heard about the one for after you're out. What is Godless Bitches like?
Well, actually, we just put Godless Bitches on hold for just a little bit.
Okay.
We've got some people that need a break, and so just for a little bit, we're putting that on hold. But I'm still on it, and it's still about kind of addressing some kind of politics from a feminine perspective, because we get a lot of the mansplaining already, you know? Yeah. And so it's kind of an opportunity for us to speak without having any kind of competition, you know? So I'm also kind of learning on air again. So
well, it's also a little extra hard because the Atheist Experience podcasts, videocast, YouTube things are so wonderfully done that it requires an entire team. And with this whole Corona thing, that suddenly becomes much harder to do. Yeah.
I mean, it's different. I think it's a lot more work for the crew. You know, the sound and trying to make it sound good. When you just have, you know, my bedroom instead of a nice sound art reverb studio, and so I kind of feel really bad for them. It's easy for me. I just get on, you know, an hour before the show, and if they need something, I do it. So I'm kind of lucky there, but I really want to push support for the crew.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that I often get asked by people who want to start a podcast, and they ask me, you know, how do you make it this awesome? And I said, you know, your starting job should be to not suck. Don't go for 100% day one, because you're never gonna get it. I mean, I don't think I'm anywhere near the top 1%. Top 10% would be great. It's just get rid of the annoying things, like sometimes you'll hear people go and they breathe too much, or they blow onto the microphone. Don't do that. Don't do those things.
Yeah, and I got lucky having the ACA teach me all of these things right off the bat, so I know how to talk next to the mic without facing straight at it so that you don't spit on it, you know, and things like that. So I'm very, very grateful to them.
Excellent. Excellent. So what did you do before you were this famous star?
Well, first of all, I'm not. But this is my activism. I basically... How much of my background do you know? Like, do you know how I came to be an atheist? Because I have a very elaborate story.
And so the tricky thing is that, assuming I know a lot, we could skip stuff, but the thousands of people that are listening would be left out in the cold, not understanding what we're talking about. So pretend like I really don't have a clue, and and let's go back to the beginning.
Okay, so... I'm going to try to make this succinct.
You were born at a very young age.
Well, I'm from a family of 7 kids, 9 people, 2 parents, same mom and dad, very Catholic family, and in a very, 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 very small town in the Bible Belt. I think that was intentional. I think that we were sheltered, and that was the goal, and I don't blame them, you know. The world is scary, and if you can protect your kids, why not, right? So I am still extremely naive to a lot of things. I'm doing as best I can about talking to people and trying to learn different perspectives and trying to grow a little bit wiser through other people. But I don't have a lot of world experience or anything like that. So anyways, just to the point, I graduated and just had no idea what to do. I just kind of figured everything out. I started drinking because I could get into bars, and I just thought that's what you do. You know, you go to work, you go drink, and you go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I did that for years, and I waited tables, and that did not help. That encouraged it, and that was just an every night thing. If I had not spent any money on alcohol, I'd be so wealthy right now. But I basically don't remember half of my 20s.
Yeah.
So I found out when I was 26 that I was an alcoholic and went to rehab. And going to rehab is kind of the pivotal point of my life where everything started changing and going uphill. That's not discrediting my wedding, which was right before that. But the thing is that my wedding was I was still just this person kind of just falling through life. And going to rehab, I learned enough things about how to be mindful and how to pay attention to things that you do while you do them, which was a completely foreign concept to me. I basically lived my life by just letting my emotions lead me wherever I'm supposed to go, because I was so proud of being a heart-driven person versus a brain-driven person, those boring people. Yeah. And so I'd go home at the end of the day and I just kind of ponder and stress out and be like, oh man, why did I say that? And why did I do that? And then I just get in this cycle of anxiety and then just go to bed, forget about it, sleep it off. Next day, same thing, over and over and over again. So I didn't know how to stop. After doing this for years, you develop a pattern to where your brain just wants to do this all the time. And that's when you find out you're an addict. I have to do this. I can't stop. So I figured out through rehab that you can't control anything other than what I'm doing and how I feel right now. That is literally the only thing I have control over ever.
Yeah.
And that concept shocked me and helped me so much, because I was like, oh my God, I don't have to worry about trying to control all of these other things and all of these other people and all these other events and everything. It just took a load off my shoulders.
I got a side question for you.
Go for it. I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No, this is good stuff. I've had some conversations lately with other people. This became a topic on the internet, I guess. And the question is, when you're about to go do something, do you hear a voice telling you you're going to go make a cake or you're going to go start the car? Is there like a monologue going on before you do something and then you do it? Or is there not?
Not really, no.
Okay.
I have basically 1,000 voices going all at the same time, and then every now and then one surfaces.
Wow. Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense now that I've talked to so many people about this, but I never have that at all. I don't have a voice. It's like I open the pantry. I'm hungry. I open the pantry. I stand there and I go, I want this. I never had a thought before looking at that's what I wanted. I didn't have a conversation with myself. I didn't have a debate with myself. I didn't have struggling voices.
I do that constantly.
Yeah, I just look and I go, oh, Pop-Tarts, yummy. Now maybe afterwards, like just earlier today, I ate a whole bunch of double stuffed Oreos. After I ate them, I kind of go, fuck me. Why did I do that? They were so good, but why did I do that? Anyway, sorry. Side note.
I guess that's how I used to live.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's kind of complicated because that's how I lived, but at the same time, I would stress, like, okay, I'd go, oh, Pop-Tarts, that sounds good. Oh, but then there's kind of all this corn syrup in the middle, and it just doesn't really seem that healthy. But could I find something healthier? But yeah, but then I don't really know if that's going to taste good enough, and I don't know really what I'm in the mood for, and I just kind of go from there. But at the same time, what I used to do was while I'm doing that, I'd just do it. I'd kind of go with it just like you said.
Yeah.
But I'd be stressing about it the whole time.
I did find out once that there is a biological limit to the number of Pop-Tarts one can eat in a setting. Just so you know, 12 is too many.
I used to have a rule that when you put butter on Pop-Tarts, you have to fill every hole.
Oh, my.
So OCD.
Yeah. So in your mid-20s, and did you go to AA or was it some other kind of thing?
So I got a PI a couple months after my wedding, actually a month after my wedding. And then
what is
a couple months later.
What is a PI? Personal investigator?
Public intoxication.
Oh, okay. What do you mean you got a PI? Is that like a cop thing?
Yeah, like I got put in the drunk tank overnight.
Oh, ooh. That sounds sobering.
Well, somehow the DWI from when I was 21 didn't do anything, but this did.
Oh, okay.
So I had to go to court, and I couldn't afford to pay the fine, so I was given the option of doing AA and community service, and I was like, sold. So I went to AA, and my first meeting, I remember it was like the third Saturday of July. It was a women's meeting in the morning at Westlake AA, and it was amazing because I left that place going, oh my God, I'm an alcoholic. And that was the first time that my mind got completely fucking blown.
Wow.
I was convinced that I was not an alcoholic. I'm just a kid. I'm just having fun. I'm just doing this. I could quit if I wanted. All this stuff. And after that meeting, after hearing these women's stories and relating to every single one, I was like, wow, I was wrong. That's the first time in my life that I've been able to say, I've been very, very wrong about something that I was very, very convinced I was right about.
It's a fascinating thing. Many years ago, I helped a friend. Their son went in overnight to the Gray Bar Hotel, and I went and bailed them out and picked them up, and then we had to go back because the parents live in a different state. Took them back to I guess a facility where you go get therapy and treatment and stuff. And even after being in the Gray Bar Hotel, this young gentleman still thought he didn't have a problem, and this was all being overblown. And as we sat in the lobby waiting for his turn, some people came in and started having this discussion about all the horrible things in their lives. And it was just like watching some kind of weird, sick soap opera on TV. Yeah. And this young guy's like, oh my God, I'm involved in a lot of things like that. And
that I look like that to other people.
Yeah. And when someone else said it out loud and weaved it into a narrative, they're fucked up and they're never going to get anywhere living a life like that. And that was the moment where it kind of clicked, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that moment, I don't know how to explain other than just mind blown is the perfect way to put it. It feels like a bomb is going off in your head, fireworks constantly.
So mid-20s, maybe late 20s.
I think 26, yeah.
Yep, you're in the AA, you've turned the corner, life's getting better. What did you think of the religion of AA, and how did you get out of religion because of that?
So that's the thing is, I only went to that one meeting and immediately knew that I needed to go to rehab.
Okay, fair enough.
I talked to my job. I got it set up. 2 weeks later, I was in rehab, the day after my birthday. And so that's where I learned about, all this stuff. And I got out and I started crocheting and I made this recovery blanket. And I've been sober ever since. It'll be 3 years in August. So I guess I was 27. Sorry.
That's all good.
Anyway, no, I was 26, 27, 28, 20. I was 26.
So just say mid-20s.
Well, it does kind of matter because because of the timeline is so short.
Yeah.
Because it basically starts from 26 to 28, so that's like all of it. And I was kind of spiritual. I considered myself spiritual, but not religious at that time.
It's a classic.
Oh yeah, I looked it up on Wikipedia and I was like, oh my God, it's a thing. It's called SBNR. So like that means I can really. That's my religion. And so that was it for a while. And at one point I looked up the word atheist and the word agnostic, and I read atheist. And I guess the definition I'd found was the belief that there are no gods. And I was like, okay, well, I can't say that. I know there's obviously something. I just don't know what. And so I kind of dropped it and I just called myself agnostic, spiritual, not religious. And in AA, they don't really push that you have to have, the big daddy in the sky. And they talk about that a lot in AA. So my God was Mother Nature.
I see.
And
I think that AA thing, by the way, that may vary wildly group to group. Just, I know I've heard other people. Yeah.
It varies from not only from group to group, but time to time, you know, like a 9:30 in the morning group is different from the 4:00 p.m. group. It's all different. So you got to kind of find out what's good for you, but it's not all religious. It's basically the whole idea behind the God, and then forcing the idea that you have to accept a God, is that you can't do this yourself. You keep telling yourself, yeah, I could quit when I wanted, but you can't. So you have to accept that you have to ask somebody or something for help. You have to go outside yourself. So I think that's kind of the point behind the God in the AA.
Yeah.
So in AA, I started waiting tables again. I needed more money, and I started having panic attacks from waiting tables because I'd been in there for like a decade, and it was just kind of wearing on me to the point where, oh my God, somebody asked me for a water. You know, just you get so mad at nothing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I need out. So I got out, got a really boring job that I'm at, and I love it. I'm still there. But that thing is that this boring job, and having lost a bunch of my friends from stopping drinking, and my husband was working like 80-hour weeks at the time, and I had nothing else to do. So I just started watching Netflix, which led to watching documentaries, which led to, holy crap, Neil deGrasse Tyson just said that we've known that for 100 years, and I've never heard that before. What else don't I know?
Oh, yeah, that'll mess you up, too.
Yeah. So that's kind of when I started the learning journey that I'm still on. That's how 3 months into this job, it was August, and Brett Kavanaugh was trying to get on the Supreme Court. And I was listening to Christine Blasey Ford's story, and I was relating to her, and I was like, holy crap. And I told my husband, I said, I'm going to be a political activist. He's like, okay, you know, and
sure you are.
So it turned into that got me to wonder about Roe versus Wade, which got me to study and watch documentaries about abortion and all that. And that's how I flipped from being pro-life to pro-choice, which was my second, holy shit, I was wrong.
That's a pretty good switch.
That was huge. So it was a year later. Couple months after that, after people all swarming me with questions and my sister asking me, okay, well then when do you think a soul starts? Oh wait, do you believe in a soul? And I was like, I don't know. Got back to a couple weeks later, and I was like, nope.
Yeah, I love those stories where someone says, hey, wait a minute, I don't know what I believe anymore because I don't believe the basket of goods that's been given to me.
Right.
I have to go fucking look it up and think about it. God damn it.
Yeah. But it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
I guess I'm lucky that I don't have to look through encyclopedias. You know?
Yeah, it is a totally different world because I know, like I said before the show, I decided I was an atheist at 13, and with one exception, I've never had any problems with it at all. But I hear these people's stories, and I know that not everybody had the same experience with me, and it sounds like yours wasn't so awful. I mean, yeah, you lost friends from not drinking, which is very common as well. So you already had a lot of changes going on. You didn't lose all your friends at once because of losing religion.
Right.
Is the family still cool? They're all Catholics? Or are they all out? Or
well, so I'd lost the friends before, and then I think it was October or November of 2018 where I was like, okay, well, I have like 100 people out of, in my family of just aunts, uncles, and cousins. So I was like, well, I can't really tell everybody. So I picked like, I put it on Facebook. I put some kind of meme that said, they told me to use my brain to find Christ, and ironically, I became an atheist or something like that.
Yeah.
And since then, I've heard from very few people in my family.
Huh. Yeah, I had one, I think he's a cousin of mine, who friended me on Facebook only a couple of years ago, and this is the nicest guy ever. I mean, I would trust him with my life. I would trust him with my money. But when he talks on Facebook, he talks like someone that's got a mob behind his back. Because it changes. Because some people, when they write, they're a different person than when they talk or when they interact with humans. And he is one of these people, and he's just the most nasty, vindictive, insulting person. And so, I called him up and I talked to him and I said, what's going on? And he goes, I joined Facebook so I could learn more about you, not hear all this crap. And I said, well,
this is me.
what you're calling crap is learning about me.
Yeah.
You just don't like what you're hearing. And you got to get over it, motherfucker, because it's not going to change.
Yeah.
So,
but I remember being like that. It's just, when you see that somebody's going down a road that you don't approve of, and you're told, oh, well, this is the only way to be, and you have to be this way 100% of the time and all that. And then you find out, oh, you don't have to do it. Well, yes, you do. If I have to do it, you have to do it. And it just you just kind of project your lack of self-control on yourself, trying to put it on others. That was my experience.
Yeah.
Like that,
so that's kind of settling out now. I mean, the people that don't want to talk to you don't, apparently.
Well, I actually have had a couple of people reach out to me that I did not expect. So I think 2 or 3 relationships have gotten stronger, and I've kind of lost most of the rest. Some have gotten pretty bad. Like one person I used to be very close to, we tried to email because I found out that anytime we tried to talk, we would both get really heated really quickly. And so I thought, well, with email, we can take our time and kind of think about what we're saying. And it was like 2 exchanges into it, it turned from a conversation to this person just started highlighting things that I was saying and just correcting it like they were grading a paper. And I was like, okay, that really rubbed me the wrong way.
Right.
So I just kind of stopped that. And then I saw that person in person a couple months later. This person said that I can't possibly know anything about love. Because when this person looks at a cross, that's love. And I don't see that when I look at a cross, so I can't possibly know what love is.
Weird. It's funny because I have to resist giggling out loud when I see a cross because what would they wear around their necks if Jesus was beheaded? Would they carry around a guillotine? They'd have a different symbol. They'd probably, use the crown of thorns. Yeah, it's a funny thing, and I don't know if you've done a lot of per se Bible studying like other people have, but
some typical stuff, not deep.
The whole mismatch of the Testaments and the New Testament, it's just chaos, and I can't even wrap my head around the fact that people believe it because they obviously don't know the whole story, or because otherwise they wouldn't believe it. But
when I was trying to determine, I believe this is literal and I believe this and I don't believe that, I just kind of went with what felt right. And to me, I was like, well, there's a lot of stuff that can't obviously happen in the Bible, so obviously it's a metaphor.
Right.
And just kind of, I would just justify it because that's what I was taught to do.
It sounds like a Marx Brothers thing to me. It's a metaphor. What's a metaphor? I don't know. What's a metaphor for you? What's a metaphor for you? It's often Christians, and particularly Catholic, you mentioned that you grew up Catholic. It's not a big Bible reading sect. Catholics aren't, because it's complicated and you don't want to worry your pretty little head trying to learn what's in the Bible.
There's a couple things, though, was that we were told to read the Bible sometimes as punishment.
That'll make you love it, right?
Right. And that just made it seem like, I don't want to touch it. And then also I went to church every single Sunday because I had to, or it'd be a venial sin. And so I figured, they read from the Bible every single Sunday, and I've gone every Sunday my whole life. So I've just probably heard it all by now.
Yeah, that's not how that works either, but
that's the impression they give, though. And
it sure is.
It felt right.
I know my kids, when they were early teens, started asking really tough questions in Sunday school. And that was not encouraged. They did not feel rewarded for asking things. It was like, I'll answer this question, but maybe you should ask me after class so no one else hears what you're asking. Mm-hmm. And they're like, why shouldn't other people hear my question and your answers? If this is true, what's the problem? It's kind of wacky.
I don't know.
So what's next for Jenna?
Let's see. Where was I? pro-life, pro-choice. And then came out and then lost a few people. Very, very quickly, I desperately seeking answers went to the ACA. And so that's kind of how the ACA story starts, is right after I deconverted. I don't know how far you want to go into the after.
No, that's good. It's just that's a lot of stuff in a really short period of time. And of course, if people want to hear more, where can they find you? Where can they read or see what you're doing?
A couple things. There's I'm on Matt's channel. We did a deconversion story. It's called A Conversation with Jenna Belk. And Neil, the 604 Atheist, also interviewed me for my deconversion story. You get kind of two different angles of it, because it's very, very long and very detailed, and there's no way to cover it all in one sitting. So
cool.
Yeah.
And of course, you're a host and co-host on the Atheist Experience from time to time.
Yes, every now and then I'll bring up personal stories, but I try to make it about the caller there. So you're not going to learn a lot about me on that show, but I do have a little bio that's on the website, and I think Matt and Don do too. So if you want to learn a little bit about us really quickly, that's where you can go for that.
And of course, you may not know this, but you were very personally involved with my last actual trip out of my house. Because my wife and I came down to Austin on March 1st when I was on the show. And when we got back is when things really started to explode with the coronavirus. And we haven't really hardly gone anywhere since then. So, I mean, we had all kinds of trips and they've all been canceled. So Austin was our last hurrah.
Aww.
We got to go to Austin, which we like. And matter of fact, it's a possible winter snowbird place for us maybe someday, but we'll see.
Cool. Yeah. I like it here.
Great. Well, Jenna, thank you so much for spending time with us and telling us about your show. Of course, you're on Facebook, Jenna, 2 N's, Belk. You're on Twitter. What's the handle there?
Oh, I'll have to tag it. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay, so
I'm new to Twitter.
You're not on Twitter. I can't stand Twitter, honestly.
No, I'm on it. I'm just new to it.
No. I've been on it forever. I just can't stand it. I don't get it. I have contextual issues, like I call it pronoun deficiency. So, for example, if someone's telling a story and they're talking about 2 men, and then a moment later they say, and then he, and I go, which he? And they say, well, from the context, you should figure out. And I go, I didn't. Well, everybody else does. See. Well, I don't. You're not paying attention then. No, I'm so interested in what you have to say that I'm asking you to clarify so that I can play along. If I thought it wasn't important, I would just smile and nod. I'm actually asking for you to help me understand.
Totally.
But that happens to me all the time. So I came up with the phrase pronoun deficiency. But yeah, we all have our issues.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and this was fun.
My great pleasure, and of course, I look forward to seeing you on the shows in the future, and maybe next year.
And we're actually on the Atheist Experience together. If you want to see something fun.
Yes, the March 1st episode. My last break from reality, the March 1st episode, and of course it's got 1 million views, and maybe by next spring, hopefully I can travel again, but I don't know.
Well, hopefully for the Faithless Forum. The Faithless Forum has been postponed until June next year, and it will be here in Austin.
June of next year sounds like, although June in Austin, isn't it like over 80 then?
Yes.
Okay. Because I kind of have this.
But we have a lot of bodies of water.
Yeah, but it's going from a building that's 62 degrees to your car that's 120 to another building that's 62 degrees. It's just weird.
I mean, it hasn't been getting as hot. I don't know. Climate change has been weird. Like, I haven't had my AC on for 3 days, and that is very, very weird.
Well,
and I looked at the weather, and it's supposed to be great for the next 5 days.
I'm still using heat, if that helps you any.
Okay. Well, I should be using the AC.
Yeah, it's not that much heat, but we do have a frost warning in a couple of days in May. So yeah,
man.
Yeah, we don't generally plant here before Mother's Day. That's our rule.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, Jenna. Well, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate you being on the Phil Ferguson Show.
Thank you so much.
My father, the man responsible for my education, taught me that Islam, rightly understood, is a religion and philosophy of peace. In fact, he said that for any society to be peaceful and prosperous, it had to institute the rule of God, or Sharia. I came to disagree with my father. It was a gradual process that started when I entered and lived in societies such as the Netherlands and the United States that applied man-made constitutions and laws. Both countries are peaceful and prosperous. I now disagree even more with my father that Islam is a religion of peace. When I look at the amount of security that is deployed tonight here, the amount of security that is deployed for the Richmond Marathon. 6 months ago, the Boston Marathon was bombed by two brothers who invoked the founding documents and the founding father of Islam. I disagree with my father when I look at the wanton killing of the Westgate Mall in Nairobi by Somali men invoking Allah and Muhammad to justify their horrid act. Kenya is the most hospitable country to Somalis fleeing their own country, so it distresses me even more. I disagree with my father when I look at the reports this week of 30 men and women worshipping in Iraq who are killed by a suicide bomber invoking the very same God and the very same prophet that they invoke. I disagree with my father when he says that Islam is a religion of peace. When I look at the 120,000 dead in Syria, Syria is now a stage of a proxy war between Islam's two most important and most influential nations, the Sunni Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Shia Islamic Republic of Iran. I disagree with my father that Islam is a religion of peace when I read about the almost daily reports of the destruction of churches, the pillaging of Christian property, the rape of Christian women, the terrible exodus of Christians and other religious minorities from Muslim countries. All this is done by men who invoke the founding father and founding documents of Islam. I disagree with my dear beloved father when I read about the teenage girl in Pakistan who's shot point blank in the head by a man invoking Allah and Muhammad because she wanted education. In the name of Allah and Muhammad, women are forbidden to drive. They're forbidden to own their own reproductive rights. They're forbidden to do anything unless they have permission from a male guardian. I disagree with my father that Islam is a religion of peace when I read these founding documents and I study the history and the example of the Prophet Muhammad. In there, I find an insistence of war and intolerance towards infidels, the hypocrites, those who associate God with others, homosexuals, women, and so on.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
I'm delighted that you're here, and I'm sorry it was so long between shows, and that may happen again from time to time. It's kind of a weird time warp with this coronavirus thing. I keep seeing so much stupid shit. I recently saw someone put up a thing that said half of the counties in the United States of America have not had even one single death. Therefore, kind of the shutdown is all bullshit. Also, which is not true. I mean, maybe the data is true, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be careful. A lot of those counties have very, very few people in them, and I would have guessed that the half of the counties that have had a death might represent 90 to 95% of the population. So it's a weird way of looking at data to cause deceit. And I don't know if just good-natured Republicans are thinking of this stuff or if some Russian trolls are creating this stuff and spreading it around. Another one that has come up is this idea that hospitals get paid more if they code your illness as COVID than whatever else it might have been. And again, this one is particularly pernicious because it has been cited that Snopes has confirmed that it's true. And to which I kind of say, no shit, Sherlock. So the example I've been giving is if I break my finger and I go into the ER, if they code my appearance there as cancer and start treating me for cancer versus treating my finger, the hospital would be able to bill more money. That's not new. That's been the case for years. That's how for-profit hospitals, that's how a for-profit system works. They get paid more for the more stuff that they do. In my example of the broken finger versus cancer, if they report that I have cancer, first of all, it's fraud. It's illegal. People could go to jail. So they just don't normally do it. Could it possibly happen somewhere? Sure. Could it happen possibly with COVID? Sure. But that's not the bulk of the diagnoses. So let's not kid ourselves. They look at that and they go, oh my God, because they can get more money, every case is fraudulent and the thing doesn't exist. Another one I just saw yesterday on a friend's wall was this idea that a friend of mine had a friend that went to the hospital for something else, something very minor, and the hospital asked him if it was okay if they coded their visit for COVID. And they, of course, indignantly refused and immediately left the hospital. I've been to hospitals, thankfully, only a time or two for myself, but for other relatives and parents and step-parents and grandparents, I've been to a hospital many, many times. No one has ever fucking asked me what they should code my appearance as. No one ever said, should we call this cancer or indigestion? It just doesn't normally happen that way. Again, could it possibly have happened this way? Maybe. But if I'm going to ask you for coding, I'm definitely not going to ask you to confirm that I'm going to commit fraud. Because that's really fucking stupid. So these are the kinds of things that we're fighting against. COVID, coronavirus, clearly a very serious illness. Clearly way more contagious than your typical flu, and we don't really have the antibodies for it. It now seems that there's dozens of antibody tests that seem to be unreliable, which is a heartbreaker. Some states are now opening or trying to open, and I do hope it goes well. I want so desperately to be wrong, and I want this to be over. I do want it to be over, but as of right now, let's see. We have 1.4 million cases and 85,000 deaths. And of course, if you hear this just a few days from now, those numbers will be wrong. We've gone from adding 25 to 30,000 new deaths or new cases per day down to 20 to 25,000. So we might actually be heading in the right direction. I did notice yesterday that Italy had less than 1,000 new cases for a day. And at one point they were 5,000 to 6,000. And they had less than 200 deaths in a day, and at their peak they were over 1,000. So maybe I can travel at some point. Maybe I'd actually be better off fucking in Italy. I mean, if I can't go out, maybe I can get a nice Airbnb in Tuscany and look over the Tuscan vineyards and the Tuscan countryside if I'm going to be stuck inside, because all I need to do is take a microphone and a computer and a phone, and I could work from Italy. I don't think I'm going to do that, but it's fun to pretend. I have a couple of quick reviews that are a little old on Stitcher, but I haven't done this in a while, so my apologies to the people leaving the posts. I have 3 of them from Stitcher and several from iTunes, which I'll do next week or two. Let's see here. This one says, I discovered Phil on an episode of the Atheist Experience. He has an unbiased and common sense approach to personal finance and investing, as well as compelling discussions from a skeptical perspective. That is from Ropasm, I guess, Ropasm. Thank you very much for that 5-star review. Another one, thankfully very short. Fellow FA, I'm assuming that's financial advisor, and atheist, gives this 5 stars. That's the title and the actual review. As a fellow advisor, the show cannot steer you wrong. The topics and content are top-notch. Thank you for that. That is from Duality. I think that's what that says. And then the third one is Clash of Fish. Okay. Title, Phil is the Man. The review, 5-star review. Phil's show is great. Lots of information about investing and the addition of long-form interviews. I can't read. Long-form interviews is really nice addition to the show. Not to mention, I sent Phil an email about investing and he responded 100 times faster than I would have thought, same day even. Can't say too many good things about this show. Again, thank you for that 5-star review. I do try to respond to emails quickly. It's just a weird thing. If I'm sitting at my desk, which sometimes is all day, 10 to 12 hours, and I have a moment to catch my breath and your email comes in, I do like to respond to them right away because then I don't have to remember to do it later. However, if it comes over the weekend or Friday afternoon or when I'm out and I see it and I go, oh, I have to respond to this, then when I get back to my office, there's another email or new emails or something else I've got to respond to. Sometimes they get kind of lost in the busyness of it all. So if I don't respond in a few days or a week, it's not that I'm trying to ignore you. I may have gone on to something else, and I apologize for that. So go ahead and remind me. I won't be offended. We're going to wrap up the show, and hopefully, probably not summer, but maybe fall, there will be a conference or two. Fingers crossed, but at this point, I'm not particularly optimistic that we will have COVID-19 under containment, in part because of the nutters who are going to go out and protest in large groups. And we'll just see what happens, I guess. So until then, please stay safe, wear a mask if you go out, wash your hands on a regular basis, and get a nice lotion so that your skin doesn't dry out and crack up, because that's not going to help. Until then, ciao.